When you want to join something like this cowl seamlessly from one side to the other, what you will do is start with the provisional cast on, and then when you finish, you'll graft the start and the end together. You may also have known grafting as Kitchener stitch, and there's a variety of ways of doing it depending on whether you're joining knit with knit or purl with purl, or going from knit to purl or from purl to knit. And what you're going to do with it is it creates a row of what looks like knitting, but it's actually done with a needle. And it's a very, very convenient way of joining two together. Now, it does require a little bit of concentration, and you have to be very careful of your gauge as you're working through it, because if you pull it too tightly, it's going to look like a row of seaming or sewing. If you leave it too loosely, it's just going to look like a very loose row of knitting. So you're trying to mimic the gauge of your knitting. So what you will do is you will have the two rows of knitting that you want to join together. They should match up. So in this case, it's knit with knit. So I'm just going to show you the most standard of stockinette stitch or knit stitch seaming. You'll have done this possibly as well before if you're joining the toe of a sock. So you have the right side facing. You may, once they're facing like this, kind of lift them up like this. This one's known as the front one, and this is the back one. I've got my yarn here, and before we start, we're going to just do what we call the setup. You won't do this again, and it's just a once off. So you thread enough yarn on your needle for probably about 2-3 times the width of the work you're working on, and you begin by going in purlwise into the front stitch. This is our front needle here, and that's your back needle. It's relative to how you're holding them. And you pull this first one in purlwise. Snug it up, leave it on, don't take that off. Then you want to go and knit nice wise to the first one in the back. And you can see here, you pull this up snugly. You have to be very careful that you don't loop this around. So bring it between the needles, and then you can go in knitwise into the back one and snug that up just enough that it feels like the tension of your knitting. So that is your setup, the front, purl, but leave it on, back, knit, and leave it off. Now we're going to go through steps 1 to 4, and you keep repeating those for as many stitches as you have on your needles. When you end, it will be a little different for the final 2, but we will get to that. When you're joining them together as well, I would suggest never ending without finishing those 4 steps, because you will not remember where you were. So we're going to begin with the first step, which is go in knitwise onto the front needle and take it off. Knitwise means from left to right. Take that off and snug that up. And then purlwise into the next front needle, but this one you leave it on. So that's the first 2 steps. Now we go purlwise into the first one on the back, which means from right to left. Snug it up, and then knitwise into the next one on the back and leave it on. So they're the 4 steps. So I'll do those one more time and you will be on your way. So the next one is knitwise into the front, step 1, take it off, purlwise into the next one, snug it up and leave it on. Step 3, purlwise into the back and take it off, knitwise into the back and leave it on. I'm going to go work my way through the next few ones here, and when I get to the end I'll show you how that works. Also, as you're going through, see the way the first one is a bit loose here? As you go, you can periodically just start snugging this up a little so that your tension remains at what you want it to be as you're working. So you just can pull each stitch slightly sideways like this to pull it tightly. I've got the wrong one here, that one, there we go. But it's easier to have a little loose than a little tight, because it's much, much easier to tighten up than it is to loosen. When we get to the very last 2 stitches, you obviously cannot do the 4 steps because you don't have enough stitches. So you'll just do the ones you can. So you go into the first one on the front, knitwise, and take it off. You can't do step 2 because there is no stitch over there. And then you go do step 3, which is purlwise into the back one and take it off. And again, there is no step 4. So we'll take a look here, and you can see that is what you have created. Sometimes this is, because it's a thicker yarn, it's ever so slightly loose, but you can just snug it up the way I was showing you and create a very, very seamless finish that looks the same on both sides, and no one will ever know where you joined your knitting.